want to make sure that everybody can hear, and I will enable the chat box here just to make sure if you can type that you can actually hear me speak. That would be great. And welcome again to one of Live with Dr. McDougall every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And as usual, we're very thankful to have Dr. McDougall here. He's a very busy man, physician, and we really appreciate that he takes this time to do this as a service to all of us. And I'm so glad that you are mentioning in your emails that you feel a sense of community when you log in, that this helps you every week to keep up and continue eating in a healthy way. And just remember that besides this, you have the forum on drmcdougall.com website, and you have the Facebook, and so that you can really feel a sense of community. So, Dr. McDougall, we welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, good. You know, as you presented, it could sound to like some people that it's a burden for me to be here. I really look forward to every Thursday Pacific time, 11 a.m. that I can get together and talk to you, Gustavo, and also to answer questions and to kind of vent about what's on my mind and the things that I'm doing and excited about. Just to kind of bring you up to date, I did a little piece, I guess it was yesterday, or maybe it was this morning on the doctor's show. It turned out better than I thought. You know, the only thing I forgot to mention is it was a debate about this guy from Australia who's on an all-potato diet, and everybody's concerned about him because he's on an all-potato diet. You know, they shouldn't be. And there's been a lot of talk out there about. There's a lady named High Carb Hannah who recommends potatoes and sweet potatoes and so on, and everybody's getting up and roar about all-potato diet. I need to mention about Matt Damon, and you know, everybody watched The Martian. I mean, he didn't eat an all pork chop diet. He ate an all potato diet.
Right.
You know, people have lived for you know, for many times in history, millions of people on an all potato diet. It's a very sufficient diet. Not that that is the McDougall diet. So that kind of happened, and the dietary goals or dietary guidelines for Americans are getting a lot of attention, which I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit because that was the subject of this month's newsletter. And I hope you had a chance to look at it. It's the February.
Yes, actually, Dr. McDougall, if you don't mind just saying a few words about the slide that everybody was looking at while they were waiting for the webinar to start. Would you talk a little about the 10-day program and what you do?
That's what's happening tomorrow. And I'm almost 69 years old. And when you say I'm very busy, I'm thinking I'm not busy enough, because there's nothing worse as time goes on, or even I'm sure when you're younger, to not be busy. So we start a 10-day program tomorrow with a good sized group of people. And I still see patients. I see all the patients along with my aid doctor, helper doctor. I don't know how to say it. He's just phenomenal, Anthony Lim. So there are two of us who see the patients. And we'll run into all kinds of variety of problems starting tomorrow. People with type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, indigestion problems, rheumatoid arthritis, MS. And so that's exciting. So keeping busy. But yeah, we put a little bit of notice up there to let you know that we do have programs. We have a weekend coming up. I think it's May 13th, the least expensive, least commitment that you can possibly put out there. It's a weekend, and you come to Santa Rosa and visit us, and Mary and I and the whole staff kind of talk to you. We just talk to McDougall Talk for the weekend. It's not like the advanced study weekend where we bring in other opinions. And then we have a couple more 10-day programs coming up before the end of the summer. So we encourage people to come in. I mean, get off your drugs, you know, avoid surgeries, get on with your life. And you know, your life is worth far more than what it costs in terms of time and money to come to this 10-day program. So we put a little notice up just to remind you.
Yes.
There's a lot out there.
And I, if you give me 1 minute, right, I would like to say something, because I am very passionate about this. A lot of people know me, some of you may not, but I'm just a regular guy, a regular person. I live here in Dallas. I'm a professional musician, and I was very, very overweight and sick 3 years ago. And I went to the 10-day program, and my life changed. And yes, it was expensive, at least for me. But I hear a lot of you just focus on that part only. And I have to say, this is just coming just from me. Dr. McDougall did not ask me to say any about this, but I would have to say that at one point I was so desperate that the question that I had was not anymore, it's too expensive. The question became, how can I make it work? Not if I can work, but how. When you switch the focus of if I can, or no, I can't, or I can't afford it, but how I can do it, everything changes, because new ideas start to come up. People that care about you and love you may want to help. Besides, the amount of money that you save when you come back from the 10-day program well pays for the program. So I just want to say that, because if you have any questions from someone just regular like me, go ahead and email me. Sometimes I can't answer the emails right away because I get a lot of them. But I just want to encourage you all. This is your life, and your life does not have a price. You cannot go to work. You can't spend time with your kids if you don't have health. So please think about this seriously. You may not be able to go to this particular 10-day program that starts tomorrow, but if you plan with time, it took me a year to plan and to save the money and to arrange things to go. But if you do that, I'm sure you will be able to do it. Anyway, that's my...
Well, thank you for the passionate endorsement. You know, we could make the program a lot cheaper. We could get rid of Doug Lyle, Jeff Novick, and all our experts too. I could probably cut 1,000 or 2 off the program. But what our goal is at the 10-day program, and I'll just tell you, is to make it the best experience you could possibly have. And that, of course, costs yes, money for us to put on. But again, to get back to the May weekend, it's about the most inexpensive thing you'll find. But the 10-day program right, has to remain high quality. And so we do everything we can to make it the best program possible. So we'd love to see you. But getting back to the dietary goals.
Yes, let's go.
The dietary goals for America. Excuse me, the dietary guidelines for America. I talk about the dietary goals for America because that's where it all started with Senator George McGovern, a Democrat from South Dakota, back in 1977. He put together with Hagstead and a bunch of other really smart people, they put together the dietary goals in February of 1977 of where Americans should be going. It was a mimic of Luther Terry's Surgeon General's report on smoking and health, which he did in 1964. It was supposed to do the same thing for Americans that quitting smoking did with Luther Terry in '64. So this was published in February '77 under George McGovern's rule. It's called the McGovern Report. And that's where all this started. They said, you know, cut out the meat and dairy and eat whole grains, starches, vegetables, and fruits. And they did it under tremendous political pressure. In fact, so much political pressure that by the end of 1977, the lobbyists from the meat and dairy industry had essentially changed the report to being meaningless. And that was '77. 1985, Seavert Koop, the Surgeon General, put out the report on nutrition, and Surgeon General's report on nutrition and health said the same thing: get off the meat and dairy. So that was '85. In 1980, the USDA and the Department of Human Health Services, they put together the Dietary Guidelines for America in 1980. So there have been 8 guidelines that have come out. Every 5 years they come out. And these guidelines I watch carefully. I try and contribute a little bit to it, but they're basically dominated by the meat, dairy, and egg and fish industries. A tremendous amount of money, tremendous amount of lobbyists, political pressure, and so on. And so the guidelines are beholding particularly the USDA to agribusiness. And human health gets a secondary nod. And one of the things that they do with the guidelines is they use confusing language. When they refer in the guidelines to healthy foods, they talk about the foods, you know, vegetables and fruits and corn and beans and things like that. When they refer to unhealthy foods, they refer to the characteristics of those foods. They don't talk about meat, dairy, and eggs will give you a heart attack, kill you, stroke, cancer. They say protein foods or cholesterol foods or saturated acid, saturated fat. You need to stay away from these. Well, see, people don't know what a saturated fat is. They do know what an egg is, or they know what meat is. They don't know what a stay away from protein means. So they use this bilingual language where when they talk about good qualities of foods, they name the foods. When they talk about the harmful foods, the ones that if you recognize would impair industries' efforts, they refer to them as protein, saturated fat, cholesterol, sodium, etc. So that's how they fool you. One of the statements I made in the newsletter is the newsletter or the guidelines as read by dietitians, doctors, the media. It would be like writing in Mandarin Chinese for English-only speaking people. You can't understand it. It's totally confusing. And it's totally contrary in what they say. In one area, they'll say something on rare occasions. They'll say things like teen boys and men should cut down on the protein they're taking in because it's harmful. And then a little later on, they say that teen men and boys should cut down on the protein. Well, first they say the protein, then they identify it as meat, poultry, etc. So they do actually use the words occasionally. And later on, as a nod to the industries, they say you should cut down on your protein, teen boys and men, but you can do it by eating lean meat, lean poultry, and eggs, etc. You know, if they just they are always beholden to industry, and they use confusing language that you can't understand. They should be talking about percent fat, percent protein. They talk about grams per day, grams per serving. Dietitians can't even understand it. So anyway, let's see if we can get a couple of slides going here. You can read the newsletter. I won't spend a lot of time on this. I'd like to get to your questions, but I do want you to be aware that the dietary guidelines are a nod to industry. They are not intended, first off, to help people in terms of their health. They're intended to keep agribusiness alive and thriving. At least that's the dominant intention. I'm sure there's some very good people involved, but there are a lot of people strongly connected to the food industry, and you can read about that and understand why they're confusing. The big thing is they're confusing. Nobody can understand it. Press can't understand it, and they double talk. So let's see if we can screen share this, and you let me know how it works out. Things have changed since, let's see, since we started, and we didn't start at the beginning. There we go. Do you see that okay?
Let's see. That is not showing yet.
That is not showing yet. Okay, no. Then let's try it again. If we can't work this, you know, our technology is interesting that we do.
It's yeah, it works when we are testing it.
You know, we actually had it working a few minutes ago, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. It's like that we have in the past, but let's just see. There it is. Let's try this.
Yes,
right,
that shows.
Okay,
that's
so there's the dietary guidelines for 2015, 2020. And this is going to dominate school lunch programs involving 8 million children, and the WIC program, and advertising, and what America produces and buys. And it just dominates everything. So you'd expect a document that was helpful to come out, and it hasn't been a document that's helpful. I got very upset about what was coming out. And in June of 2015, I wrote an article in the newsletter, a very short one, called Lies and Damned Lies. Damned Lies harm the public and the planet Earth. And that got some people's attention. And I talked about why they were telling damn lies. And the reaction was, at least in part, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has filed a lawsuit against the USDA, which I'm involved in. We talked about that last time. And it did change the dietary guidelines a little bit. One of the charts in the guidelines demonstrates the inconsistency of the guidelines. If you see this chart, you see they talk about intakes compared to recommendations. And the thing that the USDA, the guidelines, say is that dairy products are the ones that are recommended most strongly and consumed less frequently than any other foods. You see that? The fourth bar down, that's like about 90% of people don't consume enough dairy. All right, fourth bar down. I'll go down a couple more bars. In fact, look at the bottom 3 bars. What they say is that there are 3 ingredients in foods, added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium, that are consumed far in excess of what the guidelines recommend. Well, excuse me, dairy products are loaded with sugar. Think ice cream, yogurt, even skim milk is just loaded with more than half the calories are sugar. Saturated fat, that's dairy products, loaded with saturated fat. Half of the calories in whole milk are saturated fat, and 97% of them are saturated fat. Cheese, you're talking about 80–90% of the calories are fat. Most of it's saturated fat. And sodium is the highest of the foods consumed are from dairy products like cheese. You can't eat cheese except for the fact that it has like 400 milligrams of sodium per every 100 calories. So see, on the one hand, as you go to the fourth bar, they say you need to eat more dairy. And then you go to the last 3 bars and they tell you don't eat the components of dairy products. Do you see how they double talk and they lie to the consumer? It's just a great effort they put into it, by the way, millions of dollars, and great effort to take and confuse the public and take a big nod to industry. Now, this is just a partial list of some of the things they talked about in terms of comparing nutrients. And if you look at the February 2016 newsletter I wrote on the guidelines, you'll go through this, and many people have written to me and said this is the most helpful part of the whole newsletter. They compare legumes and animal foods. They say legumes are excellent sources of protein. In addition, they provide other nutrients that are also found in seafood, meats, and poultry, such as zinc and iron. And they go on to say they're excellent sources of dietary fiber and nutrients, such as potassium and folate, which are completely absent in animal foods. Well, why in the heck are they comparing legumes to seafood, meats, and poultry? Because they both have about 30% protein, but it's a completely different kind of protein. The kind of protein that causes cancer and heart disease and diabetes, etc., is animal protein. Plant proteins don't do this. Comparing animal foods, seafood, poultry, and meat to protein is like comparing chicken and apples because they both have skins. Completely irrelevant. These animal foods are very deficient in vitamin C, folate. They're contaminated with environmental chemicals, infectious diseases. This is a confusing and dishonest language when they do this. So when somebody says you can eat beans instead of meat, it'd be like, because they both have a lot of protein. Again, it would be like saying you can eat apples instead of chicken because they both have skins. Well, anyways, they've gotten away with it for a long time. They talk about dairy products are good for you because they include calcium, phosphorus, vitamin A, vitamin D, riboflavin, etc. Well, they don't mention that vitamin D, and we've talked about this in 3 major studies, and they are the 3 major randomized controlled trials done on vitamin D that have come out recently. You can see 2 of them in my March 2015 newsletter. The 3rd is just published in JAMA Internal Medicine. It was just published a couple months ago. And they all show that vitamin D taken as a supplement increases the risk of fractures and falls. And the only way you got vitamin D in dairy products is they stick it in as a supplement. They don't mention that half the calories in milk are from fat, that dairy is high in cholesterol, promotes prostate cancer, and naturally, because the way a cow works, cows make trans fats that naturally appear in dairy foods. The trans fats, the ones that are banned in certain states, that McDonald's have given up because they're so dangerous, and dairy is dirty. It's full of environmental chemicals and microbes. It's actually the dirtiest food out there, even compared to meat and poultry. They didn't mention that in the dietary guidelines. I think they should have. The benefits of protein. Protein foods. You see, protein foods, not meat, dairy, meat, eggs, poultry, fish, etc. They say protein foods are important sources of B vitamins, etc. You can read that. They never mentioned that all of these vitamins that they're talking about are never seen as health problems in terms of deficiencies by any physicians. None of your doctors see selenium deficiency, choline deficiency. They see maybe, well, probably never, because the incidence of B12 deficiency disease is less than 1 in a million. But maybe they could see a case of B12 deficiency disease. The problems with protein are not with our diet are not deficiencies of nutrients. The problems with our diet are excesses of nutrients. Excess protein, which causes osteoporosis, excess cholesterol and saturated fat that rots your arteries, excess sodium that causes all kinds of problems. But they talk about how important it is to eat protein, in other words, animal foods, to get a bunch of nutrients that you get even better from plant foods, except maybe B12. Anyway, benefits of fish, high in EPA and DHA, which are elongated fatty acids. They say they're good for heart disease and good for infants. Well, they also mention in the guidelines that mercury is in this fish food, but then they try and not make it so important. They try and whitewash it over by saying even though the mercury's in this fish foods, it's okay to eat them because you pick lower mercury fish. Pick the ones that have less mercury than more mercury. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, 90% of the methyl mercury in your body comes from fish. And infants are particularly sensitive to methyl mercury, which causes brain damage. And they also don't mention that fish are high protein, high fat, and they're almost all gone. Since I was a kid, and since I love the ocean, 90% of the fish have been fished out. They're gone. The oceans are on the verge of collapse. And they didn't mention that. They did admit guilt. They said eating patterns lower in meat are important to reduce the risk of heart disease and obesity and type 2 diabetes. But they could have mentioned much more about these meats. They didn't expand upon it. They say oils are good for you because it provides essential fatty acids and vitamin E. Well, excuse me, if you look at the research, essentially the consensus of research, it shows that taking vitamin E promotes heart disease and heart failure. Yes, it does. Of all the components of food that promote cancer, fats and oils are the strongest promoters of cancer. And many of the oils promote heart disease, like omega-3 linoleic acid. And I actually gave you the reference. You can look at that. Huge follow-up study on back in the 80s when they changed people in control trials from animal fats to vegetable fats, in other words, omega-6 linoleic acid. And they followed them over a couple of decades, and they found those who took the vegetable fat had much, much worse heart disease than those who stayed on the animal fat. They could have gone into that in greater detail. They didn't. Thoughts on cholesterol? The campaign was by industry, particularly the egg industry, which I protested so much under Lies and Damn Lies in my June 2015 newsletter. And we did make a change, I think, because what they said about cholesterol in the current guidelines is they said they removed the limit of 300 milligrams per day, which had been in the previous guidelines of cholesterol, which is about 2 eggs, 1.5 eggs a day. They said that does not suggest that dietary cholesterol is no longer important to consider. So they did kind of, backslide there, even though they took out the limits like the egg industry wanted. But they also said something that's really important. They said the Institute of Medicine says individuals should eat as little dietary cholesterol as possible while consuming a healthy eating pattern. Excuse me, cholesterol is only present in animal foods. What they said there clearly is that everybody should be following the McDougall diet. Strong evidence that eating cholesterol or eating low cholesterol eating patterns reduces cardiovascular disease and obesity. Again, they should have gone on and just say, look, folks, the truth is when we stop writing to you in Mandarin Chinese, when we take and really tell you the truth, give you a simple document that you can read and understand and make decisions about, you should be following a starch-based diet with vegetables and fruits, and animal foods should be no more commonly consumed than you would candy, like at Halloween or at Easter. You should consume eggs at Easter, no other time of the year. Turkey at Thanksgiving, ham at Christmas. I mean, these are treat foods that you can survive on various special occasions, not everyday use. All right, that's kind of what I wanted to say, but I hope that it stimulated you to get back and take the trouble to watch. Let's see if I can get me back.
Very good. Yeah, we have you on the screen right now.
Okay. Well, take the trouble. I put a lot of effort into writing this evaluation. It took me 2 months on the U.S. Dietary Guidelines and how they've lied to dietitians and physicians and scientists. And I can't believe these intelligent people who've been well educated fall into this. I want to mention the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology, and one of the big dietetic groups say these guidelines are a step forward. I didn't know that they said a big step. I don't think so. I think they're a stable or a step backwards. And I want you to also note when you read the newsletter that the American Cancer Society considered them a big step backwards. They missed an opportunity. They say the American Cancer Society says they missed an opportunity to tell the public that these foods that they're recommending, the meats, the processed foods, the poultry, etc., that these foods cause cancer. And they use the word suffering that occurs for people because of the language that was used in the dietary guidelines. So the American Cancer Society, they stood up and stood forward. The organizations like the Heart Association, American College of Cardiology, and most of the dietetic organizations, they just want to play nice. Excuse me, playing nice means that 330 million Americans stay fat and sick. Your children are dying, your children are constipated, your parents are having heart attacks, your wives and sisters are losing their breasts from breast cancer. I mean, this is not something you can just play nice about. No. That's all I gotta say.
Well, I think it's time for all of us to just accept and realize that, because I get a lot of the questions that are going to be for you today center on this topic of people that are confused and they're angry and infuriated about all this conflicting information. It's time to realize that it's about business and money, and unfortunately we're dealing with lives, but some people don't care about that.
And you can think about it in your business, whoever's listening. In your business, it's all about the money. Even if you're a charity, you've got to bring in the money to keep the workers paid. It's all about the money. And why should it be different when it comes to your life or your personal appearance, or your, whether or not you go bankrupt? The leading cause of bankruptcy is from medical debt.
Right.
That's just plain and simple business. So get over it.
Yeah.
Stop thinking that you're something special. Get over it. It's just money. The McDougall diet is a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables. You do not eat animal foods or oils. I mean, there it is. That should be the dietary guidelines.
That's it.
If I was in charge, when I become king or Surgeon General for 24 hours before I get assassinated, I'm going to say, here are your dietary guidelines. It's starches, predominantly 90% of your diet with some fruits and vegetables. And you only eat these rich foods on special occasions like Thanksgiving for turkey and eggs for Easter, and you can have some cake on your birthday. You want your health back, it's that simple, plain and simple. You can put it out to all Americans. There's no more to it. The rest of it's a bunch of, I'm not saying it again.
That's right.
I'm sure you got that. Dr. McDougall, he has a potty mouth. But, sometimes there's just a word for a situation. They're lying to you.
Jeff Novick wrote a really nice entry in one of the in the what do you call it, blog, I guess, on your website, talking about this and about how really we have to accept that all this conflicting information is driven by clicks on a website or sales of some new program or traffic to another website, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, once you realize that, you shouldn't be confused. We've done everything we can on our website, our mailings, our webinars, to give you simple, honest answers. The truth is simple and easy to understand. If you're confused, it's because somebody's lying to you. I go to a conference and sometimes I'll listen to somebody talk at a conference and what they're saying goes over my head. And I think first, boy, am I stupid. I must have missed that in my education, which is extensive. And then I think, if they really understood their subject, they could explain it to people so everybody can understand. I would have to say myself and my staff could be talking to 7-year-olds and they would understand every word we say. The truth is simple, easy to understand. So if you're confused, somebody's lying to you.
Right.
Speaking right in Mandarin Chinese.
Well, Dr. McDougall, here I have a question by one of the viewers that says, I have no weight problem. Is it okay to add flaxseed as a breast cancer survivor?
I would say no. I would say no, just to be on the cautious side. Flaxseed oil has been shown to, now of course the seed is not the same as the oil.
Right.
So I could be wrong, but I'm certain the oil is very, very cancer promoting. There's a study, in fact, it's on my website. It's under the hot topics on fats and fish fats and so on. It's about, you'll see it down there under omega-3 fats, the truth is untold, something like that. It talks about studies that have been done on animals and tumor growth, and adding flaxseed oil increases the volume and the number or the number of cells by adding flaxseed oil by 1,000-fold. These are cancer-promoting oils. When it's mixed up in the flaxseed, it's much, much safer. But, you know, just to be on the safe side, why do you want to add that stuff?
Right.
It's just, you know, stay just like nuts and seeds and avocados. They're probably healthy. You know, I think they're healthy, but they're going to make you fat, just like the flaxseed. Flaxseed is going to make you fat.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're fat with breast cancer, when you're overweight, what happens is the cells, your fat cells, actually turn your adrenal hormones into estrogens. They're little factories. So anything that's going to make you fatter is going to give you more fat cells, which is going to increase your estrone levels, which is an estrogen promotes cancer. So, you know, if you just eat healthy avocados and nuts and seeds and flax seeds, you're going to gain weight because these things are 90% fat. And those extra fat cells are little engines that make estrogen. So from that simple point of view, don't do it. Right. You should be looking stealth thin. I gave you a lecture a couple of maybe a month or so ago. It's in my November 2015 newsletter that talks about what Walter Kempfer thinks is an ideal body weight. And I've told you, you know, he recommends for somebody my size, 6 feet, to be 160 pounds. Well, excuse me, I fall short of that. Maybe a little bit. It depends on how heavy the clothes are I wear. But bare naked, I'm less than 150. And most people that meet me think I'm okay in terms of physical appearance. But all my staff's the same way. I mean, Doug Lyle, who you've had on, you know, he fits Kempner's guidelines. Jeff Novick, Alec Isabeau, who's our athletic instructor, all our nutrition instructors, Mary. You know, when you eat this way, starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables, you just plain and simple fall to about that kind of weight that Walter Kempner suggests. Right. But even if you were 10% more, you know, even if, say, I was, instead of 150, if I was 165, I'd still be okay. I think I'd be a reasonable weight. Right. You know, it's not like these guidelines that I offered are those that you should try and get to. But if you find yourself losing too much weight, as, say, somebody with breast cancer should, you should be stealth thin. You find yourself losing too much weight, look at Kempner's recommendations. You'll see that you probably have a few more pounds to go. If you're fighting heart disease, cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, I mean, you're just not heading in a good future. You should do everything you can that costs nothing. And what that is to eat basically a diet of starch. Kempner recommended rice with fruits and vegetables. And that's what you eat. And you go for a walk and you get some sunshine. And that's the best medicine you'll ever get for anything, except for maybe if you're bleeding to death, a few sutures would probably be better than some carrots and potatoes.
Right. Good. Dr. McDougall, a couple of people asking about following your program, following the Starch Solution. Should they worry about blood sugar spikes? Sometimes 2 hours post meal, this person says that their blood sugar is 180 to 190. Why
would you check your blood sugar? Get over it. You know, I see people all the time that checking their sugars 3, 4 times, 5 times a day because they're pre-diabetic or diabetic. You're wasting your life focused on these numbers. You poke yourself and you worry about poking yourself 2 hours before you poke yourself. And then when you poke yourself, you get a number, you worry about that for the next 2 hours. Your whole day is spent around poking yourself, looking at your blood sugar. And if you're taking medications, then get over it. You know, to manage your diabetes, even type 1 diabetics, I ask them to only take their blood sugar in the morning. And I treat them very simple with very simple doses of insulin, not insulin pumps. I see these people, they're running around with an insulin pump, this high technology, and themselves, their spouse, their children, everybody around them, their friends, all they're talking about is, well, what's your number now? How much insulin did you give yourself? This is a wasted life, ladies and gentlemen. You are wasting your life by these machines and numbers. So your sugar is supposed to go up after you eat. If you want your sugar to be better, then eat better and lose some weight and get some exercise. And then the numbers will look better, but you'll be healthier. The heck with the numbers, as I've told you before, and you can find this on my website. I think it's my March 2009 newsletter. But anyways, look under Hot Topics Diabetes. But if you aggressively treat diabetes, in other words, you make the numbers better, there are 6 major studies that show you hurt yourself. The studies show you increase your risk of death, heart disease, sudden death, hypoglycemia. You hurt yourself by aggressive treatment. No studies show otherwise. So get over it. Check your sugar if you're diabetic, type 2 diabetic, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. If you're type 1 diabetic, maybe once a day. Make some decisions and enjoy your children, your grandchildren, your golf, your whatever. Get on with your life.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for the answer. I have, someone says, I have had weight loss surgery twice. It's a long story, and my metabolism is destroyed now. Will the Start solution help me at all?
Tremendously. There, you go to my Star McDougallers, look under Mike Wilson. He's a guy that I have taken care of for more than 30 years. And he had gastric bypass surgery back then, and he didn't lose the weight because of it. Of course, gastric bypass is one of the most brutal surgeries that you can imagine. They cut a whole section of the intestine out. Just didn't work out well for him at all. And he finally started our diet. He lost like 160 pounds. I don't know. You can look it up. Mike Wilson under the Star McDougallers. I take care of a lot of people who have had, these banding procedures, the sleeves, all kinds of intestinal surgery. And one way or another, the dieter figures how to get around these things. They start blending their food or eating more calorie-dense food. Somewhere or another, they seem to get around even these devices. They lose weight, but a lot don't. And then when they decide that their band is failing, or the sleeve operation or the bypass operation is failing, then they follow the diet that I recommend. And the first thing they think is, oh my goodness, my doctor told me now that I have this intestinal derangement, this malformation created by the medical business, I've got to get extra nutrients. So I got to take vitamin pills and I got to eat more protein and more calcium. Well, that's complete nonsense. The most nutrient dense diet there is the diet I recommend. And the calcium and protein are just sales pitches from industry. So you're getting bad information. Anyway, if you've had these intestinal derangements, go on the most nutrient-dense diet there is, which is starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables. I probably wouldn't even treat most people with any vitamin supplements. Probably, I really wouldn't.
Right.
I don't deal with it much, but only B12. That's all I give them. You'll thrive, and maybe you get your band taken out or whatever. Just get away from these people.
Yes.
Get the problem.
Dr. McDougall, quite a few questions about, I know we have addressed this, you have several times in other webinars that people can watch again, about B12 and how some doctors like Dr. Greger recommends 250 micrograms. You say less, others say more. Some people say that this vitamin is a low absorption vitamin. So what type also? What would you say?
I've been thinking about this for 40 years, and I still have some questions in my own mind. What I know is that you need less than 0.5 of a microgram of B12 a day. I recommend 5 micrograms a day. I have for 30 years. Just give you a 10-fold increase. The problem is you can't buy fewer than 500 micrograms, and most supplements go 1, 2, or 5,000 micrograms. Now, the reason they do that, I believe, is because they're dealing with people who only have passive absorption of B12. If you have active absorption of B12, which occurs in the intestine where the stomach makes intrinsic factor, which binds with B12 and causes B12 to be very, very, very efficiently absorbed and recirculated. But there are some people who don't make intrinsic factor, like those who've had their stomach cut out, or those who have an autoimmune disease that attacks the stomach cells. Anyways, those who have lost the ability to make intrinsic factor, and in that case, they're always told to take B12 shots because they can't absorb B12. Well, that's not true. They just have to take very large doses of B12. If you take 1,000 to 2,000 micrograms by passive absorption, in other words, you've lost the active ability with intrinsic factor to absorb B12, but by passive absorption, you will absorb sufficient amount by taking oral, and you don't need the shots. I would recommend people check their B12 levels if they go that route. But that's why I believe you can't find reasonable doses of B12, such as 5 or 10 micrograms, is because they want to cover the people with a loss of active absorption of B12. Yes. Your mic is off.
All right, here we go. What about the type of B12?
Well, there's the cyanocobalamin, the hydroxy, and the methylcobalamin. In my book, The Starch Solution, I recommend against the cyano. But there has been a study since that says the cyano form actually has far more benefit than the methyl or hydroxy form on taking care of nerve problems. That's why I say I'm still confused about what to recommend. Back when I wrote the Starch Solution book, it said the cyano form was had some problems. You can read about it in the book. Either problems with well, one way or another, it created more problems. So there are a couple of research papers out there. There's not a lot written as to whether you should be taking the cyano or the methyl. I've been taking the methyl for a long time. I just switched to the cyano. I don't know, folks. I really don't know which is better. I think for right now, you should pick any or all of the three. Maybe switch around here and there.
Right.
But there's still some questions to be answered. Sorry, right. Sorry, I do not know everything. And there's still some details that need to be fixed. In terms
you don't know everything?
I don't know everything. In fact, yeah, you know how the saying goes, if I could only remember the things I once knew, I've forgotten so much. Yeah.
All right. So a very interesting question about nitrates and nitrites, and if they're harmful or helpful, or what are your thoughts?
Well, they are harmful. This has been known. In fact, when I published, with the help of my friends, the first dietary guidelines for cancer prevention, which we did in Hawaii back in, I think it was 1977, maybe 78. And we sent it to the American Cancer Society, and they told us we were premature in our recommendations. And they came out a few months later with the American Cancer Society dietary recommendations for preventing cancer, which were a mimic of ours, by the way. So when I wrote that back in the late 1970s, I talked about nitrates and nitrites and hot dogs and sausages and so on were some of the biggest sources added by the food industry to prevent spoilage. And that's why they use them. And they're very carcinogenic in terms of particularly the intestines. But they should be avoided. You'll find them in processed foods, and just plain and simple, don't eat it. You shouldn't be eating sausages and hot dogs, which, by the way, are made of. What are they made of? Well, you know, the first thing they do is they stun the cow, hang it, or the pig, hang it up, strip the skin off, the fur, then they strip the muscles off, and then they take everything else. You know, the testicles, the ovaries, the spleens, the liver, the lymph nodes, and they turn them into sausage.
Mm-hmm.
And then to preserve the sausage, they add nitrates.
Oh.
You know, it's really a gruesome business. As they say, I remember Sanger, I don't know, the very famous guy, you probably know what I'm talking about. He said that if you could see what was in the slaughterhouse, you'd never eat it. You know, if they have windows in the slaughterhouses, you'd never eat it. You'd never eat food. Whereas if you go out in your garden and you pick your potatoes and corn, I mean, it's just an amazingly pleasant experience. It's because that's your food.
Right. So, yeah, exactly. What about someone that, for example, this person says, I eat no oils, no dairy, no animal products. My question is, I work out with weights and I also run, and I keep hearing trainers and others talk about how important it is to supplement protein in the form of shakes. I want to know if you have changed your position. I just want to hear it again from you.
Sure. These shakes and protein powders are very dangerous. They cause calcium loss, which leads to osteoporosis, kidney stones. This protein is cancer promoting, as Dr. Campbell talks about, so does much other research. So no, you don't want to do this. You don't want to eat these protein powders. One of the things that you might consider about taking protein powders is they do stimulate muscle growth. Excuse me a second, there's something coming in on some phone line I gotta get rid of. So, all right, what they do is the protein powders will stimulate growth. And the way they do it is protein powders as well as high protein foods. They make growth factors in your body. They cause your body to make growth factors. One of the most commonly talked about, you can look this up on the internet, pubmed.gov or even Google. And one of the most growth promoting hormones that's made by eating these proteins is insulin-like growth factor 1. It's a substance which appears like insulin, this molecular structure. There's a very strong growth factor. So this will promote the growth of muscles and bones, but it also promotes the growth of cancer. It is a mechanism that it, shows that insulin-like growth factor 1 is one of the strongest promoters of lung, brain, colon, prostate, breast cancer. So you're going to promote growth, but some of the growth you don't want promoted, like cancer growth. It also increases your aging. Little dogs compared to big dogs, but dachshunds compared to Dobermans. One of the things that's characteristically different about them is the amount of insulin-like growth factor 1 that's present in these dogs. Big dogs have a lot of this growth factor. Little dogs have less of this growth factor. I mean, think about how long big dogs live compared to little dogs. Now, I've had a few Rottweilers in my life, and that 8, 9 years is a good life for a Rottweiler, whereas some of these little dogs, they live 14, 17 years. And growth factors are one of the dominant features in terms of aging. You will age faster. Big people, in terms of height, big people die sooner. They have more cancer, more heart disease, because they eat growth-stimulating foods, which during adolescence cause them to grow taller. So they continue eating growth-stimulating foods, and they die sooner and have more disease because of the growth factor produced. So yeah, you can grow more muscle, but why don't you just take testosterone? Oh, did I say that? I mean, if you're looking at harmful ways to increase muscle growth, I would categorize these whey powders and soy powders as equally harmful as taking male hormones or any other way I think of to stimulate growth. These are toxic.
All right.
And they're cheating too. They're just downright cheating.
Exactly.
Anyway, I've dealt with many athletes over the years, and fortunately, the ones I've dealt with, like Carl Lewis, used to be my patient. Set the 100-meter dash. You're from Dallas. Yeah, Carl set the 100-meter dash, world record for the 100-meter dash. Did 3 long jumps that I don't know have been beaten since, and won 3 gold medals following the McDougall diet. And he talks about it in Runner's World back many years ago. You can find the reference to it under my hot topics, under protein and poultry, under an article I wrote, probably 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, on what should athletes eat for high performance. You're going to see a whole discussion about this Runner's World magazine and Carl Lewis. And I suppose that's one of my great fames in life, is I had a chance to help this man. And he recommended Monica Seles, the famous tennis player, to us, and we took her hair for a while. But all athletes should be, and most are, listening to the high carb message. We've talked about that, about the Olympic winners among the Kenyans and the Tahomari Indians and the running Indians how winners, they eat starch. Right. And losers, they eat meat. They lose in so many ways: their personal health, their performance, and how about the world for the future? I mean, they're just losers. These are losers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, would you say that to be a winner, I mean, if you eat a starch-centered diet like the one you promote with some other vegetables added to the side, we should really not be worrying about how much calcium I'm getting, how much protein I'm getting, right?
Well, there's never been a case of calcium deficiency ever reported in the world literature. There's no such thing on any natural diet. It's never occurred. In fact, the strongest bones in the world are people who eat the least calcium. And that you can find, of course, in many spots, like my Starch Solution book. Likewise, there's never, ever, not any single case ever of a protein deficiency due to a natural diet. I mean, you can get calcium and protein deficiencies if you're starved to death.
Right.
I mean, then you're deficient in everything. I talked to you about how Walter Kempner used the rice diet. Exactly. 93% of the calories came from sugar, carbohydrate, and rice, plain table sugar and rice. The reason he uses table sugar, white sugar, is because some of his patients who are very sick with kidney disease and heart failure, they couldn't stand the protein load of rice, which is 5% of the calories. So he cut it in half, sometimes as much as in half. Cut the protein content by adding table sugar, which would cut it down to 2 to 3% of the calories as protein. Now, that's low. I mean, you're really hitting the margins there. But that's the only way you could create a diet of protein deficiencies. You'd have to take and eat table sugar, or some other oil.
Right.
Oil will do it. Oil has no protein. But otherwise, no natural diet is protein deficient.
Right. All right. Very good. Well, I think we have a video to show from your early years. And we're getting close to being here on air for an hour, so we'll have to wrap it up. But if you want to say a few words after the video, fine, it's okay. But if you have to go, we understand.
I don't have to go. I'd like to see what you picked for a video. What people should understand is that I had a television show for, I don't know, probably 20 years, 25 years. I was the co-host of Lifestyle Magazine. I had my own TV show called McDougall MD. And these shows still play. I don't know whether they still play or not. I didn't look for it, but they played worldwide in 95% of the households. And one of the opportunities we had in the Lifestyle Magazine show that I co-hosted for many years, remember 95% of the households that went to, is our roving team went out and we did segments on different issues all over the country. And so I had a chance to put all these segments together, and you can see them all if you want. They're under in our website under McDougall, about McDougall. But we just picked. I had them all divided up, and so I picked these various segments that we could kind of show for entertainment from my past. So this is like the past 30 years of my life. We did these what I consider very interesting segments for Lifestyle Magazine.
Yes, they are. Very.
So to show one thing, I'd like to see which one you picked.
Yes, well, I chose one that helped me so much when I attended the 10-day program and I came back and I felt empowered by this topic.
Let's see what you got.
So it's 4 minutes. Here we go.
Our health and medical professional, Dr. John McDougall, is here today to talk to us about labels. John, we didn't want to show any particular products, so we took some beautiful packages. This bright red one had chocolate chip cookies in it. I'd have picked it because it was red, and again because it had chocolate chips in it. It's got a whole list of stuff that I can't even pronounce, let alone know what it means.
Yeah, I imagine you're confused, Dan, but there are some things that you can make out of this. For example, the first thing you ought to know is that by law, manufacturers are required to list the ingredients in order of appearance. So the first ingredient you see there is what is most in the package, and the second ingredient is the second most dominant ingredient. So you get some idea what's going on by the order of ingredients.
So I picked this up and it says bleached flour.
Yeah, that's what's most in there. You know, you'd rather have whole wheat flour, but keep going. I bet there's some other things in there.
Down about middle way, it says invert sugar, semi-sweet chocolate chips with artificial flavored emulsifier, brown sugar, corn syrup, molasses, on and on.
All right, did you listen to all those sugars? The molasses, the brown sugar, the invert sugar, the sugar, that's all sugar. Now what the manufacturer did is the manufacturer broke those sugars up into individual names so that they could be listed further down on the ingredients list. If they listed it as all sugar, which it really is, it might have appeared first, and then, Dan, if you'd have picked it up and looked at it and you said, first ingredient sugar, I'm not going to buy that. So it's a little trick that the manufacturers do.
Here's another label off of a very popular snack food, and almost make my salivary glands work to think about it, too. But it starts off with hydrogenated soybean and or cottonseed oil, and then it goes on cheddar cheese, sour cream, coconut oil, and on down.
All right, a couple of things you see there. First of all, they list two types of oils. See, that gives them the chance to buy the cheapest oil at the time of manufacturing. And then the second thing they did is they listed several dairy products, whey product, milk products, and so on. And again, they could take and they could put the milk products further down on the list by breaking them up. And so you need to read all the ingredients there, and you see, try and group them a little bit. You may want to avoid dairy products in your diet.
And then on all of these lists are things that I presume are additives or preservatives.
Oh, yeah. Confusing. I mean, I don't know what all those things are, and I can't pronounce half the names. And so it's best to avoid these things. I mean, some people have allergic reactions to them. You know, some of them are still under suspect, under concern. And there are some that we do know about, like salt, for example. Yeah, you know that you should be on a low sodium diet. A lot of people, it's very, very important. And so you want to pick that ingredient out. You're going to pick the sugars out. You're going to look at all the colors and additives and so on. And I think as a general rule, we can say that the least ingredients, the better. And here's a better general rule. How about just not buying things in packages, Dan?
Oh, wait a minute. But I get hungry, and I need something fast.
Well, there are all kinds of things that you can buy. You know, they call it peripheral shopping in the supermarket, where you shop around the outside, not the inside where all the packages are. And what you buy is you buy the grains and the potatoes and sweet potatoes and corn and various fruits and vegetables. And you can be certain that those ingredients are all right for you. I mean, after all, they were put in there by nature, and they've got to be right.
All right. You're suggesting, then, that we're going to have to take a new course in label reading in order to protect our health.
Yeah, but it's a simple course, Dan. I mean, we don't have to make too much out of it. I mean, look at the labels. Think about some things that you know about. If these are dominant, if these are right up at the front of the list in the ingredient list, then put it back. And, you know, you'll go to the supermarket shelf, and you'll find one package of cereal that has a whole list of ingredients. Right next to it will be another package that just has a few things, maybe whole wheat flour or whole grains in it. And that's the one you want to buy. So do a little comparison shopping, but also, Dan, keep rereading the labels, because, you know, manufacturers will change things on you, and then, you know, you could be taking in a whole bunch of salt that you weren't taking in before.
Well, the message is we got to read the labels, that's all. And you keep reading, and you keep watching McDougall's Medicine. Thank you.
Well, what do you think about that?
Well, you know, I unfortunately, I'm too fixed on myself to pay much attention to it. The years have changed me,
Yes.
but I don't know necessarily for the worst.
Oh, it's wonderful to see that. It's your message is consistent, and that's the sign of someone who's honest and cares. So I would appreciate.
Well, I'm glad you noticed that, because I have taught essentially the same thing with very little changes
Yes,
since about
you have.
1977, and that's because I had the great fortune to discover what I believe is the truth. And there's, you know, the truth is, as I say, easy to understand, simple to explain. You'll find a lot of people out there changing their minds.
Changing, right.
Yeah, and they write one book about sugar and the next book about oil and the next book about this and that. And I find a high level of dishonesty. I mean, I don't mind naming names, but let's just not do it right now. A high level of dishonesty out there in the diet industry.
Well, you yourself, you have had someone at some point ask you to change your point of view and write a book on something.
Oh, yeah, yeah. 1990, the Penwood Putnam, which was one of the biggest companies ever. They published 4 of my books. And they told me in 1990 that I had to stop writing about high-carb diets because Atkins was coming back. I said, that'll never happen. I mean, the scientific literature is absolutely clear that this is a very, very, very dangerous way of eating. And the public could not be fooled. And they said, well, you know, we want you to write a low-carb, high-protein diet book. And you know, I said, you know, you're wrong, but I was wrong. I was wrong. The pendulum swung strongly back, and it's just barely creeping back in the right direction, and that was 1990. So book companies and magazines like Time Magazine and New York Times and Wall Street Journal, they just want headlines. They just want to sell products. They're just doing business. That's their only stake in it. Their stake is not whether or not the world survives or whether we become extinct on this planet, whether you have to shoot yourself with insulin every day or let a heart surgeon open your chest. They don't care about that. Their bottom line is selling books and magazines and news stories, etc. And once you realize that, then you understand why this flip-flopping. It has nothing to do about the truth. It has everything to do about the market.
Dr. McDougall, I want to mention that next week, Dr. Lyle is going to be a guest, and he's going to be talking about losing weight without losing your mind.
Amazing lecture.
And everybody, this lecture is really going to give you the tools, very important tools to succeed. I think they should be watched by everyone. I will be in Lithuania, but we will still do the webinar, and as usual, it will be recorded and it will be put on the website at drmcdougall.com. So I want to encourage everyone to watch it, and then the week after that, then Dr. McDougall will be back with us.
And we also want to encourage people to share this with their friends and relatives.
Yes, exactly.
You know, you look out there and you say, what can I do? I mean, you know, my mother, my sister, or my best friend, they're dying, and they keep going to the doctor and getting more pills and more excuses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the webinar is a good way to get started. And it's free. There are no gimmicks. I mean, those of you who've been with us for a long time know that but basically the message is free. It's on the website, and
it is.
And so use the webinar as a tool, get them hooked.
Yes.
You know, like Mary's got me hooked on watching Walking Dead. That's the stupidest show I've ever seen in my life. But I have to watch it.
But now you're hooked.
But if people can get hooked on that TV show, then you can get hooked on McDougall webinars.
Oh, you can definitely get. They're addicting. I want to, yes, but let's remind everybody that to watch these recorded webinars, they are put on your website, drmcdougall.com, under the education tab, and then under webinars. So make sure that you go and watch them. Thank you, Dr. McDougall.
Oh, thank you, Gustavo. I tell you, I couldn't be the communicator I am without your guidance.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you, but you are doing just fine without me.
No way.
All right.
Have a nice time in Lithuania. And,
all right. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you then.
We'll see you then. All right. Bye-bye.